Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be sharing with you highlights of a VOD review I did with my mod and patron Izzy. I do VOD reviews as part of my patron loyalty rewards, and Izzy has been generous enough to support my content, so this is my way of repaying her. In this video, we'll be looking at main tank play, particularly Orisa and Wrecking Ball, but also a little bit of Winston. Amongst the things we'll be focusing on, like shielding positioning, I wanted to quickly mention the topic of risk taking, since this is something that particularly low ranked players tend not to do a lot of, and it can give a lot of value if done correctly. I've put at the front of the video here my little monologue about the concept of risk taking versus impact, and hopefully you'll find some helpful things in here even if you don't play tank at all. Once again, I also want to thank Izzy for being brave enough to put herself out there for criticism, because trust me, it is not easy. And from her part, she's definitely got a really solid understanding of the game and is doing a lot right, but we'll just try to improve on a few key areas. Final note, if you happen to be watching this video on the day of release, then make sure you tune into Twitch tonight, where I'll be hosting the first installment of my new series, Group Up, where I gather some other content creators and talk all things Overwatch. And I'm very excited to be sharing a call with Fariha, Chronodota, and Frito of Your Overwatch. So let's get to it, guys. Okay, so risk versus impact, right? The more, you've probably seen this in your games as well, DPS players in particular tend to be very high risk, right? They tend to play games in a way that's very, very high risk. And essentially how good a DPS player is usually comes down to where they plot on this graph. You know, the more risks, usually a lot of them will take lots of risks. The good ones will also have high impact. So the good ones will be like here. The bad ones will take a lot of risks and have very little impact. So they'll be here, right? You want to essentially be closer to this, as close to here as you can, but this is impossible. No one can have amazingly high impact and never take a risk. It's not possible in Overwatch, because, well, if you never try to make a play will never happen, right?
Yeah.
So as a main tank, you want to be safe, right? You don't want to take too many risks. You don't want to be like a DPS players. DPS players can afford to take lots of risks because that's their role. Main tank players probably have to be a little bit more cautious. So as a main tank, you probably want to be taking like this level of risks, like medium risks. Occasionally you take a risk, but generally you're reliable. What you want though is to be as high up on this impact scale as you can. And to do that, you have to take a risk at some point. If you always stay here, then anyone else may have played the hero. When you're climbing, you have to not only be better than the enemy team, you have to be better than anyone who would have been in your position, because that's how you climb, right? To climb, you have to be better than every other main tank in silver, because you can have more impact on a game than every other main tank in silver, and that's what wins you games, and that's what makes you climb. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to occasionally take a risk, make a play to try and have a greater impact, because if you don't, you'll never leave this area. If you want to achieve this, or even maybe something like this, which is ideal, then you need to step onto the risk scale. Yeah, so what I said was, what I noticed here is that you haven't put your shield down. This is a little bit of a minor thing relatively, but you haven't put any shield down as of yet. And now what's going to happen is, so the play is going to start. Match is started, and you put your shield down at the same time as the enemy Orisa, if you notice that. Yeah. And what this means is now that you are already at a loss. Both your shields basically went down at the same time as a consequence, as you can see. But as a defending Orisa, you should always win this fight. And the reason you win this fight is you put your shield down first. So what should have happened here is, ideally, what you do is you do the air trick. You know this with Orisa, right? Where you shoot.
Yeah, but I fail every time.
Yeah. So that's fine. I fail frequently too. So if you're not comfortable doing the air trick, what you do is just drop it here. And that's all I want you to do. But the reason you do that is that if you drop it here right now, let's say, right, the game has just started, payload is moving. You drop this here. By the time this payload comes around the corner, you're already maybe 3 seconds left till your cooldown is ready. Which means that when the enemy Orisa's shield goes down, you can instantly refresh your one, and they don't have one. So already you've built an advantage. You see, that's the defensive advantage of an Orisa, is that already you're winning the shield war without actually having, your team hasn't done anything different. All you've done is place your shield earlier, and then you win the shield war to start with. I believe you were calling quite a lot of your halts, But yeah, always call your halts. Now we're going to see a decision here from you, which I don't like in a second. So now you drop down on top of them. So if I just take this back a little second here so that we can see the perspective. So they're going this way. Actually, I'll use the arrow keys, which are a nice addition. So they're going this way. Now, the reason you never drop on top of the enemy like this is that you are completely exposed. So you see they already have a shield. You have nothing. When you drop like here, you've given up your cover. You just put your shield down 2 seconds ago, right? And of course,
Yeah.
Orisa always needs shield. And if you drop on top of them, you give up all shielding and all protection. And you'll see in a second now when you drop what your angle is and what your position is relative to them. So now you've dropped. Look at this. You have no cover, right? You're forced to fortify because you're worried about all the damage you're going to take. They can spam you as much as they want from this side. And you have 6 seconds left before you can even use another shield. So in this scenario, do you have any idea what would be a better thing to do?
Well, I guess then letting them pass through and then behind them, because then they're gonna be both in low ground choky stuff and we are all on the same side. Because letting them pass and then rotating all over, all around the inside would be too long, but I don't know. Obviously, I don't know since I dropped down.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering if you had any, regrets about this decision. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea theoretically, but the problem with that is with this being a payload map, unless someone actually drops on the payload, it will start to move away from you. So if you drop here, for example, they have no reason to fight you because the payload will continue to move away from you, and then you're under pressure. So I think the best call is to actually rotate around because the time the payload takes is longer than the time it'll take you to run around. So basically when in Gibraltar in particular, when the payload gets to about this area, you either need to go all the way back or you need to drop down aggressively, but that's not ideal for an Orisa comp. That's what you would do with the Reinhardt comp, but not with an Orisa comp because at the short range, you're sacrificing why Orisa is good. So what I would have recommended is that you rotate all the way around, drop to the other side of the car wash or whatever you want to call it, and then fight there. So, you drop down here. It's all right. It ends up coming up all right for you. I think your team wins this fight. The enemy team, I'm not sure what they're doing at this point. But yeah, that could have been a painful moment for you. Now we're going to just talk about shield placement because we're going to see a couple shields go down. This was a nice halt hook combo with your hawk. But when your shield starts replacing now, what we're going to see is you're starting to throw the shield further and further away from yourself. And you're starting to move further to the side of your shields. And we'll see this as I just let this play for a second. So again, you're going to throw the shield and you're going to see how far you've thrown it from yourself. And the reason it's bad as a Orisa to throw your shield away from yourself is because the further away you are from the shield, the more angle the enemy has to come around and flank you. So again, a knock-on effect is don't peek if you don't have your shield. So you go down to 7 HP here, dangerously close. And by having the shield here, it's offering you almost no protection. Because the enemy, they could, for example, if they had a wall climber, they could climb up to this point and then they'd be looking on top of your shield. Or they can simply walk around the shield. And also because you're so far away from your shield, there's nothing to stop them from just walking past your shield. And then you're completely exposed here, right? Yeah. So with Orisa, never drop your shield significantly further away from yourself unless you plan to then move in yourself. If you're just going to stay here, you're leaving yourself exposed. And you can see actually how far back you are from your shield. And you start peeking further out of your own shield. And we'll see examples of this later. And there's the second reason why you don't, or perhaps third/fourth reason why you don't throw your shield far away is that the travel time there is actually in between the travel time you got slept. So if we watch this again. So you throw it out, and again, as you throw, so if you've thrown it at your feet, you don't get slept, right? The shield blocks. So again, always 9 out of 10 times, throw the shield at your feet. One, because it will travel quicker. And that window when you're shieldless is any time you could get domed or anything like slept like this, hooked. Anything can happen even in 1 to 2 seconds of you being shieldless. But secondly, yeah, all those things I mentioned about cover. So just a minor thing. And also, always as a tank, you want to be behind natural cover whenever you can be. So ideally you should be here in this area here, so that if you put your shield here, I like this shield, right? I like that you are pushing out, you're being aggressive, you're not letting them come from spawn. This is a good play. But then you have to be right here so that if your shield breaks, you're not out in the open. Because if you see here, see how much of an angle you're giving them when your shield breaks? All this area, you have to cover this distance just to get, you have to get from here to there just to be in safe distance. But if you're in this area, the minute your shield breaks, you're behind natural cover. So you don't take any excessive damage and you can get right back there. Does that make sense so far? So, okay, so the shield goes down. This is all fine. But now you see how far away you are and you're forced to back up now. You're again go down dangerously low, 100 HP. And your Ana, shout out to your Ana, who's pocket healing you very hard to keep you up here.
Yeah, he was pocketing me really hard.
Yeah, so, and again, so what happens is, as I always say in Overwatch, one mistake leads to many mistakes. So if we rewind it back to about here, when your shield breaks, you have so much distance to cover to get back to safe location, right? Lots of distance to go. So you start running. You're scared now because you're taking lots of damage. In a panic, you drop your shield ahead, but as you can see, they're already walking towards you, and they're already in a second going to walk past your shield. So with Orisa, always want to keep a little bit of distance, particularly from scary enemies like this Roadhog here. But because you were rushing to be back in cover and you were low HP and you desperately get back to health, you drop your shield at your feet and they immediately walk past it, as you'll see in a second. Immediately, the Zarya walks past it, high charge, the Orisa walks past it, and again you go down to about 70 HP and you could have died very, very easily here. You very, very easily could have died. So again, just if we fix that one thing up, these three mistakes will go with them. And then again, same principle. You throw your shield. Ooh, wrong arrow there. You throw your shield here. They walk past it. It's not covering you. And again, you're taking so much damage from this Zarya. And you die. They're running away from the Bob. So you drop Supercharger, and by the time you come back, hey, where's everyone gone? Because they've run away from the Bob. Because they hadn't actually invested anything into the fight. They had no what's the word? They had no horse in that race, right? They didn't have any reason to commit. So always be cognizant, then wait for them to actually be committed. So by committed, I mean either they should be in a position where they can't run away. So if they're here, they can't run away now, right? Because the cover is too far away. Or if they've committed ultimates, then they have to go in because they've committed to that fight. So next fight starts. And again, see how far you tossed your shield away from yourself. And I have to say, I don't like this angle, and I'll explain why in a second. Because you're going to hold this same angle for a little bit of time, and it should become apparent very quickly. Perhaps you can have a guess yourself as well why you think I don't like this angle.
Not really.
Okay.
I guess it has multiple angles from which they are coming to me, but to me, but.
Yeah, so just thinking about some of the things we've discussed, obviously, you want your shield to have as few ways for someone to circumnavigate it as possible, right? So, as we spoke about earlier, in that position somewhere down there, the danger was that they could go over your shield or walk past your shield or go around your shield. Those three dangers all apply here because as you hold this angle, their spawn room is not very far away. Right? And they have a lot of cover to get to this point. They can get to this area relatively easily, right? Do you agree with that so far?
Yeah.
Which means that if they can get to here, for them to take this extra 2 steps is very easy, right? For them to walk past the shield, very, very easy. On top of that, if they can get to here, they can get to here, and then they've gone past the shield. If they can get to here, they can get to here, and they've gone past the shield. And of course, if they're really smart, they can always go all the way inside.
Upstairs, yeah.
Upstairs, and then they've come all the way over the top of your shield, and your shield is completely wasted. So never put your shield in a position where it could be so easily circumvented. And as I said with Orisa, always want to be a little bit back. You want to be far enough away that no one can just walk into your face. And you want to be able to see everything because you have long range with your weapons, and likely most of your team will have good range. So this angle here is actually way better where you are right now. If you drop a shield here, What's the advantage of dropping it here compared to here, let's say? Do you have any idea?
Well, first of all, natural cover,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the open space in front.
Exactly.
Well, they have to. I can see all three actually, and those two upstairs.
Exactly.
So all the entrances and natural cover, the open space in front of me.
Perfect. Exactly. We're getting it. There we go. So if you're there, you don't. They can't just walk past your shield. As it is, your hog is doing some sort of Mission Impossible theme music right now. Or that's your Bob? That's a Bob, right. So there's a
That was a
Bob.
Bob.
There's a Bob deep in their back line trying to do some heroics. Again, your hog ties nicely. But again, you see how far your shield is? Now it's even further away. Same problem. So like I always say, if it's the same problem many times, that's way better than 10 problems one time, right? Same problem. Because you throw your shield far away, very easy for them to just walk past it now. So now they drop a Bob in front of your shield.
And I have no idea where to go.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you're scrambling because you don't have natural cover, right? This is why you need natural cover. If you were able to run behind those boxes, this Bob does nothing to you. But because you're in the open yourself, and now you're walking past your own shield, right? Just to get to them. So because you don't have a great angle, now there's a Junkrat flanking, you see the problem? He's just able to walk. He's able to just walk around your shield and just start spamming you. So all these angles, you're and then what happens is you're now panicking, right? Mentally, internally, you're like, oh crap, I'm getting spammed from every freaking direction. And that takes up mental space. That infringes on your decision making. In a calm, collective environment, you will make great decisions 9 out of 10 times. But under pressure, that's when decision making gets poor. So always try and put yourself in as few pressure situations as possible. And you do that by always making sure your shield is in the safest location possible. Again, too far away from yourself. And the Zarya walks
I feel
past
like
it.
it's gonna be just a lot of me throwing away shield from now on.
Now the Zarya is pressuring halt, but again, you're not dropping your shield immediately. You're focused on other things. And again, the quicker you drop your shield, the quicker you have it back. This time I'm okay with you dropping your shield ahead of you because you're going to walk there in a second, right? It's fine to do that if you plan to walk there. And that's one way you can take space as Orisa, is to aggressively throw your shield somewhere. So let's say you want it to be here for whatever reason. If you throw your shield and then walk, great, because now you're like boss Orisa, you're making an alpha move. You're like, I'm going to take this space. So that's perfectly fine. I'm happy with that. Your friendly Bob gets dropped in. He gets CC'd and then your hog decides to go in. So at this point, your team is doing a lot of poking in front of your shield, so I don't mind that you've pushed a little bit forward. My only complaint is the Supercharger should have come sooner. So we're going to see why in a second. So with the Supercharger timing, you want to be basically enabling as many of your teammates as you can, right? And that's the nature of Supercharger. It's boosting everybody's damage. So in a second, you're going to see not only a Bob get dropped in, but a whole hog also get committed by your team. And they're not getting the kills they need to. And that is your trigger to say, okay, so at this point, your team has committed already. With this Ashe, this Bob is one commitment. And remember what we talked about earlier about when you want to use Supercharger is when you think that they're committed or they can't go anywhere. Can they go anywhere from here? Would you agree? They're too far to get back there.
Yeah, they're all behind the payload, basically.
Yeah, so they're hiding. They're cowering behind this payload and this Ryan shield because they have nowhere else to go. This Bob is putting them in a tough situation. So this is already a good time to drop Supercharger, but now your hog also decides that he's going to whole hog this. So this is definitely now, this is when you take a step here, you drop your Supercharger and you say, let's go. Because that's what's going to put the pressure on them. That's going to take the damage, ramp the damage up to now be lethal. At this point, your team is doing damage, but not enough to kill anybody. And now the Supercharger comes late. And now the opportunity is gone. The pressure is gone. You see, when they were earlier, they were hiding. Now the Reinhardt feels confident because the Bob is gone and the whole hog is gone. He feels confident to walk past your shield. So he's going to walk past your shield and he's going to shatter you. Bam. And you're all dead. So again, if you recognize the opportunity, you drop your Supercharger aggressively, this pressure leads to kills. But because you're a little bit late on the Supercharger, the moment is gone. The Reinhardt walks past your shield, bam. So does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I was reluctant to commit because they already threw two of
Hmm.
our ults,
Sure.
and we're nearing the end, and
Hmm.
I'm expecting them to ult back, and we won't have anything to save us in that kind of situation. So I was hesitating a bit there.
Got you. And that's fair. That's totally fair. My advice would be that, particularly, so when you've just lost a point, you have to stop a steamroll. Yeah, of course, don't throw 6 ults, but sometimes you might have to overult to stop the momentum of the payload moving. Because as all of us know from our games, when the payload starts moving like this, sometimes it just seems impossible to stop. So even if it means aggressively committing 3 ultimates to win this fight, because this is a great place to hold once you stabilize. This area is very, very tough for them to get back from because it's so long for them to walk. You've got all these sight lines. So even if it means aggressively popping 3 ultimates, do it. You have to stop the momentum. It's always better to slightly over ult than under ult and lose the fight.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so now we're gonna see you play a bit of Wrecking Ball. Just quick question: why Wrecking Ball?
I'm not really that skilled on Wrecking Ball. That's
Mm-hmm.
something I want to improve on,
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to practice more.
Sure, fair enough. So we're practicing. Okay, got it. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to spend too much time fussing about mechanical issues with Wrecking Ball because, as you probably know, there's a couple of instances where you'll miss the hook and lose the momentum of the rolling. We're just going to talk generally Wrecking Ball tactics. So okay, you're waiting to kind of sneak in behind and roll behind. This is fine. Not an issue here. Generally, though, always. My only piece of advice here is always think about the direction of when you roll through, where they're going to end up when you roll through. So in this case, in this angle, when we see here, where you're rolling through is nice as a disruption, but does it actually put anyone too much further from where they want to be? This is where they want to be. Do they really end up particularly far away from where they're going to be? No, right?
Not really, no.
Now, what would be better is if you came around this angle, up these stairs, and now when you roll this way, they fall here, and now they're in trouble, right? Because they've fallen into your team. So anything you can do like that, where you can force the enemy to fall into an unfavorable position, is great. Is great as Wrecking Ball. So if you were able to knock someone into the low ground, that's perfect. As it is, the enemy Zarya does have. So that's exactly what happens with this Zarya, and this is huge. Big shout out. This is a good. It doesn't actually. She actually gets the health pack, but this is some 500 IQ. You saw exactly what she was gonna do. You were like, oh shit, she's going for the health pack, and
Yeah, but I missed.
almost you rolled past her. I think she just body blocks you actually. I mean, yeah, it would have been great if you were able to beat her to the health pack, but I
Yeah,
applaud the effort. Anyway, so because you knock
thank
her
you.
to the low ground, you now have the kill, free kill. So this is what I meant about you drop her down, free kill, and now the enemy team do what you did, right? And watch how they get punished. The difference between what your team did and what their team did is they did not punish you. You hard punished them for dropping. So let's just watch that sequence back. You roll through here, knock a couple people down. With the pressure, it forces the enemy Zarya down. Now you pick her off. There's one kill free. And then we're going to see that they all just drop on top of the payload, like I told you not to. And now look there, Orisa dies. Next person drops, Moira dies. And at this point they've already, and then their mercy drops, she dies, and then she reses the Zarya, so she feeds you some more ult charge. So all this is perfectly great for you, and is exactly why you do not drop on top of the
Yeah.
enemy. Okay.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to mention when you asked why Wrecking Ball, you can do a lot in this rank with a semi-decent Wrecking Ball because, like this, if I can just when you talked about knocking them off of the high ground,
Mm-hmm.
even booping them back was enough in this SR
Mm-hmm.
area to make them panic and dislodge. Since they were dislodged, oh, okay, the plan failed. It's gone.
Yeah.
So they started dropping down. Actually, the exact same thing they capitalized against me, I'm trying to do to them, but
100% noted. As clearly the Wrecking Ball movement there causes panic in the Zarya, which then causes panic in the rest of the team. Okay, so next thing is again, you're being sneaky and you're going to try and roll through them. The angle isn't great this time though, so two things. First is, we'll just talk pure physics. When you roll through here, this is just too tight a corner. You will never be able to turn like that. So the best you'll do is just run against this wall, and that's exactly what happens. So you're never actually going to have a successful roll through in that sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was counting on, since shields don't feed, I was counting on running in shielding and basically confusing them for a second. Basically, I was thinking of, if I can just make them turn around for a second, that's gonna be it.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. So what I would suggest is a better angle is actually just to roll through their face. The reason for this, why? So, again, in the spirit of trying to think about where you want to knock them, and this is, like I said, I appreciate that you're trying to just cause general chaos, but you want to improve your play to above silver and gold and platinum, right? You want to be playing as good as you can be. So play as good as if you were, in Overwatch League. Obviously, none of us are in Overwatch League. None of us are that good. But mold your play to the highest denominator, not the lowest denominator. So by rolling through here, the benefit of what you're doing is they are desperate to recontest the payload, right? The payload is approaching the checkpoint. So it is absolutely on them to come here and contest the payload. Now, by rolling through here, what's going to happen is you're going to knock them further into this area, and that's going to cause them to panic. This is at all ranks. This would cause them to panic because you're stopping them from potentially touching the payload. If they can't get here in time, this whole fight is completely pointless. So even if they then kill all 6 of you, it's completely pointless. They've lost the reason they were here. So anything you can do to apply pressure for what they want to do is ace. Is basically the perfect thing to do with Wrecking Ball. So if you roll through here, you force them into this area, and now they have 2 choices. They either waste their time fighting you, and like you said, the shields won't give them ult charge, so it's a complete waste of time. Or they have to run past you in a panic, and now you're stood there, M1ing in their face, hitting this Mercy, hitting this Moira. So either outcome here is great for you. Whereas I appreciate that this is, it might cause panic, but not only will it not knock them somewhere they don't want to be, they want to go this way. So even if you knock them this way, it doesn't bother them. But on top of that, it takes longer. You don't have a good swing angle. So for all those reasons, I would suggest this. Does that make sense? I believe at this point your Zenyatta is tilting everybody in voice comms.
Oh yeah, the game progressively. I mean, but also why I chose this game in particular is because apart from me playing quite badly, what normally happens is usually somebody tilts beyond. I mean, he was telling us here that group up, and then he peeks and dies to the dynamite and stuff, and that's stuff that happens. And sometimes I feel like there's nothing I can do. I cannot convince them to stop tilting. I myself am not tilting because why should I?
Yeah.
But then someone starts complaining, then the other person starts complaining, and everybody's angry. And I'm just trying to find a way to save the game, to make to even win one fight, so they stop being angry and start being happy again, and then everything goes back to. And when that happens, I really don't know. Sometimes I get lost. Like, how can I salvage this when everybody is angry?
I mean, what you've described there essentially is most people's ranked experience quite often, is that people in all ranks, they will tilt for very little reason. And then sometimes it feels like, what can I do? And obviously it's very good that you're not tilting yourself. And it's easy for me to say, but you have to keep the attitude up. Regardless of what people are saying, you have to sort of still be in the voice comms. Still telling people, guys, come on, we're going to do this. And what I would suggest is the way to untilt everybody, obviously, like you said, is to win a fight. And how you can have an impact is to try and make a play. Now, this is something I wanted to cover generally as well with you, is that quite often you opt for the safe play over the attempt to make a play. You sort of often want to tell your team, either with your actions, with your comms, or both, that we're going to take this fight, we're going to go in. And actually you do that right here, and you're going to see the outcome is that you decide, all right, enough is enough, let's go in, let's start this fight. So even though you start this fight 2 people down, because you roll through, what have you done? You've taken all their attention and you've made space. This is what we talk about when we talk about making space. is that everybody's looking at you, and now your Tracer comes in. Now your rest of your team, because up until now, watch. So when we're hanging around here, right? Look how far back you are. I understand you're on 200 HP, but you have a duo partner who's a healer, and you can always run back into the spawn room if your Zenyatta isn't healing you. At this point, you should be ready to... Oh, I think you're breathing really loudly, by the way, Izzy.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. At this point, you should be ready to roll in the minute everybody's back. So ideally, you might even be up here by now, because that gives you the chance to slam for free. But you should be ready, right? Like right here, ready to start the next fight. I recognize that you're waiting for your team, but they're going to get itchy, and they're going to start having like, oh, I need to start this fight. I need to peek. We've all been there. People in ladder just cannot stop peeking for the life of them. This Zenyatta is getting itchy. This Hog is getting itchy. They both are desperate to peek. So as a main tank, you have to recognize this and say, these guys aren't going to wait for me, or they aren't going to wait for a full 6, so I have to start the fight for them. So as you see, the Hog already goes and gets himself killed. And this is when you think, all right, I'm going in. So even though the Zenyatta dies, because you've started this fight now, you've led by the front as a main tank, and you've made space for your team. Now they start to push in, and you'll see they're going to start to get kills now. There's the first kill comes in. You go back in. The Doomfist is going in. This is the unluckiest landing of all time, by the way. This is... Everybody has to watch this self-Kobe. Here we go. Kobe. Junkrat trap. So, yeah. So the Doomfist comes in. Your Mora gets another kill. And now, because you've started the fight, you've been aggressive, you're making a play here. Again, this is great. Perfect Wrecking Ball execution. You slam through. You hook up, rather. You drop your minefield and you slam them. So this is perfect. Unfortunately, the Roadhog is the one who gets on it, so he's going to live through it. But if this was a squishy, they're quite likely dead. But you've made all this space for your team, and that's why you win this fight, because you started the fight. Don't wait for your team to get antsy and impatient and start the fight for themselves. Start the fight yourself. And again, you're making the same mistake. You start to wait a second too long before you start this next fight. As main tank, always be right up there. You should be right up there at the front, or at least ready to swing through the minute they show their face. Instead, you start to go towards the payload. No, do not waste your time as a main tank pushing payload, unless you're Orisa. You have to be taking the space. You have to be already. There's no way you should let them take this shield so easily. You have to be rolling through. Do not ever let them come for free. Anywhere as a main tank. Don't let anyone take anything from you for free. Always roll through. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're waiting. But again, look, so your Hog isn't waiting. Your Reaper isn't waiting. So why are you waiting, right? If they're going to start the fight, at least let you be the one to do it. Because you're the one best equipped to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bubble.
So, do you remember, did you watch my latest video?
No, I didn't get to watch it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
this is Winston play without your video.
Sure.
It's completely blind.
Well, I recommend you watch the video, but this is a perfect example of what I talk about, and I'll sum it up for people on the stream who maybe also haven't watched the video. So, as Winston, you only have 2 resources. This jump and bubble. Jump, 6-second cooldown. Bubble, 12-second cooldown. Without these, you are dead as a duck. You're absolutely helpless. Absolutely 100% gonna die. So always be very, very careful with the 2 resources that you have and how you use them. And any scenario where you can get to a place where you want to be without using these cooldowns is best. And what do you end up doing here? You jump. You use both cooldowns. The shield breaks in half a second. And now look where you are. Out in the open.
Completely exposed.
No protection. And you're now in a hell of a lot of trouble. So, what is the better option? Better option, you have multiple options. First option, easiest option. Can I walk this distance without taking too much damage? Against Orisa and Hog, highly unlikely. Highly likely you get either too much entry damage or you get hooked. What is my second option? Well, I'll take it a little bit slower. I'm not going to jump it in one stage. I'm going to do this in 2 stages. So what do? You jump here. And if you know there's a little bit of a pathway, you can kind of hop over. and then you're on this bridge. And now what you can do is, again, what I speak about in the video, is you can just drop on these people rather than committing your jump pack cooldown. So when you drop on them like this, and even if you now drop your bubble, and you start fighting them, now if your bubble breaks, you have a jump pack cooldown, and boom, you're out. No danger whatsoever. You're in complete control of that situation. In this situation, the minute you press your jump pack, you've lost control now of what's going to happen. Because you're in the middle of them, you get halted back, your shield breaks instantly, you have no control now. You're just running and hoping you don't die. So now you're forced back, you've committed your cooldowns. And now the second thing I said, never ever go into a clump of enemies or anywhere you're not safe without your bubble ready. And what ends up happening is you drop down, you've committed your both your abilities, your bubble cooldown isn't ready yet, and you're in a lot of trouble again, and you're forced to run. So although that was bad, it still works, and I'll explain why in a second. It's still gonna win you the fight, and this is gonna go back to what we spoke about earlier with the wrecking ball. Even creating space badly is better than not creating space. So in this scenario, this is a objectively bad decision and a bad jump. However, you are at least doing your job as a main tank. You are the first person in. So remember what we spoke about? Make a play. You have just made a play. This is how you get your team back on your side. If we're talking about people tilting, they're like, oh, I can't win this game is lost, may as well stay in spawn. You've made a play. You said, all right, I'm going to make space for my team. I'm going to start this fight. And now they're all looking at you. Every single one of them's looking at you. You get lucky. This hook breaks. But in the meantime, I'm not sure if Twitch you can hear this, but the Reaper death blossoms. He death blossoms over here. He takes out the immortality and another character in a second. So already you made space for your Reaper. Your Tracer lands a pulse bomb on the Roadhog. Dies for it, but at least she's doing damage. Your Zen kills the Orisa. So that jump, even though you died, even though it was poorly executed, you made space for your team. And that's what won them the fight. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Except higher up, yeah, I'll probably just be deleted.
Yes, higher up, you will die here in a second, and then they'll kill the rest of your team too. Because this was you left yourself super exposed twice. First time here, you possibly die right here. You don't, and then you try again. Again, wait. In this scenario, as I said in the video, wait for the bubble cooldown to come back before you jump again. Instead, you jump in. You could even have hung around here if you really wanted to. You could have waited here for another 4 seconds. But you drop down immediately. And honestly, you should die here. Should die here. And then they're happy. But you get away with it. Your team comes out on top as a consequence, and you win this fight. And that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you found this video helpful, and hopefully some other players out there might relate to these issues too. Shout out to Izzy once more, and as always, I want to extend that shout out to my other patrons too, who do the awesome job of supporting me. But that's it from me. I'll be back next week with another video. See you guys soon.